Good evening, and welcome to the third episode of Ireland Reports. I'm your host, Alex Sheridan, and today I'm joined by Cllr Linda de Courcy from Independent Ireland. Today we'll be talking about the bill brought forth by Independent Ireland to help reform the nomination process for the presidential nomination, hashtag spoil the vote and how it might affect the outcome, and the importance of getting involved on the local council and contesting local council elections. Well, Linda, how about you tell me about this new nomination reform bill which Independent Ireland are about to put to the Dáil?
Hi, Alex. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. It's still, there's been a lot of talk about the nomination process. Obviously, we've all been, well, I'd say the vast majority of people have been frustrated with the lack of nominees on the ballot. Three is a bit of a disappointing number, considering that there were some genuine contenders. Obviously, Maria Steen, Nick Delahanty, and even Gareth Sheridan. Would have liked to have seen the three of them on the ballot, because I felt like they would have generally added a lot of diversity and genuine diversity and excitement to the debate. So basically what Independent Ireland have done is they've come forth with a way of making it a bit easier for people to get on the ballot, but still ensuring that you do actually have to go through a certain nomination process. I don't think every Tom, Dick and Harry should be able to say, I want to run for president. Well, obviously you can, but you have to be nominated. So we're still looking at 20 Oireachtas nominations, but also including the 14 MEPs into that. So that would give another 14 MEPs. I mean, we didn't have MEPs when the presidential nominations idea was first brought about and floated. So I think the fact they are elected members, they do represent the Irish people, and I think it's a great idea to have them. And also, whereas you would actually have to have 4 individual councils nominate now, that you would no longer be individual councils, but it would be 80 councillors. So it's still proportionally for the Oireachtas and for the councils, it's still 8.2% of elected representatives, be they councillors or be they members of the Oireachtas or MEP. So I think it makes it fairer, because if you're looking at getting 80 councillors from all over the country, that actually makes it achievable. It's still a bit of a challenge. I mean, if you're really, really, really radical, the chances are you're not going to get them. But if you're moderate and just looking for a genuine opportunity, like Nick and Gareth were both doing, then I think they probably would both be on the ballot. And I think that would be really good for democracy. So if we had that situation in place at the moment, then the chances are we would have 6 people, possibly 7 or 8 even running, but we wouldn't be stuck with the 3 that we're stuck with.
Yeah, and just to remind our audience, the current criteria is 4 council nominations or 20 members of the Oireachtas, and that can be made up of senators or TDs.
Yes.
So just to clarify, this is going to be a mix and match of 20 members of the Oireachtas or European Parliament, and then specifically that must be Irish members of European Parliament.
Yes, sorry, yeah, one of our 14, or 2 or 14 members. So for example, if Maria had had the opportunity to go to the MEPs, the chances are she would have got 2 more votes.
Yeah,
so
she
that
would have got Kieran Malooly from Independent
Yeah.
Ireland, that would have brought her to 19, and then she would have been one off, which could have been, who's that independent from Ireland South?
Michael McNamara.
Michael McNamara, who everyone always gets, I do myself, thinks he's in Independent Ireland because he's very, very close. But yeah, no, she would have got the 20 if they were involved. Yeah. And this wouldn't involve a mix and match of, like, let's say you could have, 40 councillors and then maybe 10 Oireachtas members?
No, I think keeping them separate is kind of obviously the way to go, But and the very frustrating thing as well, I mean, when we had our presidential nomination candidates come to us, I think we had 5 people come, and in all fairness, none of them were really. Most of them actually should have been running for a council seat or an Oireachtas seat, and I think some of them had already run. But I mean, they didn't really seem to be the right person for a presidential nominee. Now, we didn't have anybody that we wanted to nominate, so that there was no issue with people with nominations being blocked. But obviously in some councils, the Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael coalition did get together and actively block people, and I think that's shocking. Because it's not like the chances of someone who gets elected in via the council, there's a very low chance that they will actually win, but they should be on the ballot. They should have the chance to be in the debates. They should have the chance to challenge the consensus, because at the moment nobody is challenging the consensus, in these debates. So this will mean that you have a genuine fair chance. That you still have to work hard. I mean, if you want to be President of Ireland, you still should have to do your due diligence. You still, should have to go speak with councillors, speak with Oireachtas members. But I think it just evens the playing field. So if you are, say, centre right, slightly conservative, etc., then you would have a much better chance of getting a nomination through the councils, which I think would be really good.
Yeah, I think it's since 1990 this is the lowest or the smallest field of candidates we've had. We only have 3. And I'm seeing it everywhere. Even my own mother is complaining that there's nobody to choose from.
Yeah.
And I can definitely see either there being a very low turnout from disinterest or demoralisation, or maybe this hashtag spoil the vote thing might take off. But before we get into spoil the vote and if Independent Ireland is supporting it or not, a little bit more on this bill and how Independent Ireland intend on delivering it. Will this involve a constitutional amendment where we'll need a referendum, or is this something that we can, make an act and deliver through the Seanad? How does this exactly work? I
wouldn't be sure of the particulars, because obviously, first of all, the Dáil would have to approve the bill, and I think at the moment there's very little chance that the Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael coalition will support an Independent Ireland motion. So I think that would be the first hurdle, and then there would be. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not that up on how that would all process. But I think if it was passed, it could be, obviously it could be achieved over the next few years. So, but I have very little hope that it will be supported, unfortunately, which I think is disappointing, because I think it's fair. It still, as I said, requires that you go through the Oireachtas or the council, and then that also. I mean, I had quite a few people contacting me about who they'd like me to support in the councils, various people, and so then obviously, the members of the public can contact their councillors and say, well, actually, we would like you to support this person or that person. I think one of the other issues with the council elections was the fact that several of them were held on the same day. On several, I think one day there were like 8 different councils meeting, which is totally unfair on the candidates. And so I have a bill. I don't have a bill. I have a motion into South Dublin to ask the South Dublin executive to take the lead when we get to this stage in 7 years' time, that they would actually discuss with all the other council executives and set an agenda. So, you could easily do Dublin City and South Dublin on the same day. You could do Fingal and Louth or whatever. But it's unfair to expect someone to go from Cork to Mayo to Leitrim and then back to Dublin on the same day. So to again slightly even the playing field and make sure that people who genuinely, if you spent like 4 or 5 weeks contacting councillors and then you get the schedule and then it's Cork and it's Donegal on the same day, that makes it physically impossible for you to attend both, and that's unfair on these men and women who are trying to get a nomination secured through the council. So I think that's it's a reasonable motion, and I would hope it would pass. I wouldn't imagine there would be any objections, but it would just make sure that and even if it's by province or just by kind of by local region, that if you want to address every council, you should be given the opportunity.
Yeah, totally understood. I think this election cycle, it's a little bit worse than last time. It might just be since Fine Gael publicly, Simon Harris announced or lay down an edict to his councillors not to nominate any other candidate other than the Fine Gael, or Fine Gael already had a candidate, and then we get rumours that behind the scenes the same with Fianna Fáil. Could be that, but a lot of these nomination meetings were really sandwiched together this time. Yeah. Like last cycle, they were a little bit more spread out. Even so, you did have a lot on the same day. Physically impossible to get from one to the other. I actually vividly remember Peter Casey, I've said this on the podcast before, got a helicopter out so he could go from council to council. So yeah, for him. But not everyone had the resources to that, So yeah, I guess they're hopefully there can be some improvements made on that, and better coordination between the councils in future. Well, we were speaking on the demoralisation of some members of the electorate with the small field of candidates that we have, and there's been a started online, hashtag spoil the vote, an effort to write in a candidate of your choosing, be that Maria Steen, be that Gareth Sheridan, be that Nick Delahunty or somebody else. Is this something that you support personally? Is it something that Independent Ireland can get behind? And if so, do you think it's going to have an effective outcome?
I think it's interesting. Like I did do a video on it there, I think last week or the week before, and my frustration is that there is nobody on the ballot that I consider worth voting for. I would never vote for someone like Catherine Connolly. She's a far left socialist, so I couldn't even to kind of get a dig into Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. I just couldn't put number one beside her name just because.
One thing, sorry to interrupt, that I think you might share with her is she did vote against the hate speech bill. And I think some people online are saying that, well, at least she's the one out of three that has that on record being against the hate speech bill. And then she was against the referenda last year, but she supported a no vote. So that does make her a little different, but
but
otherwise,
still, her policies, like, it's just I've obviously there's a lot of far left people in South Dublin in the council chamber, and like you listen to what they say, at the monthly council meetings. So you kind of they do call for things like socialist revolutions and all that sort of stuff. So it's just it, but even and when you're looking at Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, they are the parties that are responsible for the sale of City West, which is in my LEA, against the wishes and the pleadings and the beggings of the people of Saggart, Rathcoole and City West. So I could never support a candidate that's party to what they did to the hardworking people of Saggart and the surrounding area, like turning City West Hotel. It's like taking the amenity away from the people, taking the business away. Like, it was a great, business, great for bringing business into the area, and it's turned it into a permanent migrant centre. So for that reason, I could not support a Fianna Fáil or a Fine Gael candidate. So that's why I feel like I'm left with a position where, for the first time in my life, I will actually be spoiling the vote. 6 years ago in the general election in my area, there was nobody that I wanted to vote for, but I knew I could vote for someone that wouldn't get elected. So I that's what I did. That was sort of my default, because I hadn't got so far where I was feeling like I was actually going to spoil my vote. But so you look, and as a party, everybody can make up their own mind. Like, we would never tell people what to do or whatever, so I haven't spoken to the TDs about how they feel about this. I know there's a lot of frustration. I know some people are saying they don't want to vote, but again, everybody that I speak to, like, no one I've spoken to thinks this is a great selection, whether wherever they're from, they're feeling frustrated. My brother, actually, I think he's going to vote for Dustin.
Just the turkey,
it's funny, because in the last few days as well, kind of the mainstream media seems to be acting like, well, actually, if you spoil your vote, it's not counted, but that's not true, and we all know that's not true, because you always get the number of spoiled votes, at the end. And I think for the last presidential election, it was something like 18,000, which is actually quite a lot. I was surprised it was so many. So maybe people do that regularly. It's not something I've ever done before. It's not something I take lightly. I would never not vote, because I feel it's really important. I believe it is a duty. It's great to be able to vote, but I do believe it's a duty. I do believe it's important to vote. But if you have a massive cohort of people for the first time saying none of these people are worthy of representing the Irish people, in my opinion, then it'll be an embarrassment to the government, which I think actually would make me smile. We obviously, one of them will be president, but like, if it's an embarrassment to the government, then I suppose that would be a good thing internationally as well. Like, the people of Ireland are not happy with the way the Irish government is conducting its business.
Interesting, and it's that you brought up that RTE are implying that you cannot track the spoiled votes, where in fact they do. We know how many spoiled ballots we get. And you're correct in saying it was in around 18,000 the last presidential election, but in the European and local election, I believe there's one that you got elected in, there was over 100,000 nationwide. Wow, and usually, I've been to a lot of count centres. You look at these spoiled ballots, it's people putting X's beside the candidates that they like, getting confused with a referenda. You put an X beside what you want, or filling it out backwards and forgetting to put in the number one. And then some people just don't seem to fully understand how to do it. So I've asked my guest last week, who is Councillor Malachy Steenson. He's on Dublin City Council. He said he'll look into it. My question to you is there any way of maybe getting observers into the count centres to track in some sort of way, even in like a tallyman fashion, to get like a running average of the writing candidates who go into the spoil votes? Because it's been kind of difficult to get into these count centres, especially when there's such a low amount of candidates in the field. In a general election, so many people can run, and if you're a team member of a particular campaign, you're entitled to go in and be an observer of the spoiled ballots. Is there any way that Independent Ireland or you as a councillor can help get observers into the count centres to maybe track who are the writing candidates and how they might be doing?
I would have to look into that because I haven't really thought about it until you said it now. But I think it is a good idea, and also it would be good because obviously yes, a lot of spoil votes. And I know actually because with the local and the MEP elections, and with Niall Boylan, obviously he did very well last year, and like a lot of people were doing 1, 2, 3 for the locals, and then doing 4, 5, 6 for the MEP. So like a lot of votes were lost like that. So yeah, so there is obviously votes are spoiled through people not understanding fully the process, but then also votes are actively spoiled by people writing whatever they want to write, or just none of none of the above. So it would be interesting to see, and I definitely will look into that. I'll have to get back to you on a plan for that, but it would be definitely worth doing.
Yeah, and then speaking on just the council nominations or the council representation, which we touched on there, seeing you were elected last year. You spoke on to me off camera before about the importance of getting involved in local council, and I guess a lot of people have their eye on national politics and just want to be a TD, but I guess the councillors get a little bit overlooked in the importance of their role, especially in terms of town planning, city planning, road planning. I hear so many complaints about the mapping out of Dublin City and the cycle lanes and how they make absolutely no sense. Yeah. Going into the city, coming from Castleknock, the cycle lane just switches over to the other side of the road in the middle of traffic and it makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
And out in your area, I've heard from your constituents before, the layout of Clondalkin has made it quite difficult for parking for people who are elderly, people who might have a disability, who might have a lot of children in their family. That is just, you're totally reliant on public transport and you can't really drive anywhere in Clondalkin anymore. So anything you can tell me about that, about getting involved in local council and running for a local election?
Yeah, it's funny because, and I fully admit that prior to, getting elected, or obviously a couple of months before when I really started considering it, that I really did not understand the importance of the role of the councillor. And obviously, as you said, people want to be in the Dáil, and you do have more influence in the Dáil, but currently the Dáil seems to be abdicating all the responsibility of everything they do to Brussels. So you do kind of wonder, how much influence they're having. But the councils are responsible for all these road layouts. I was coming home from Glenageary yesterday, and driving up through Baker's Corner, and lo and behold, what they're doing. It's because they're actively trying to get people out of their cars. They're actively making it harder for people to drive. They're actively trying to get people walking or cycling this active travel because they're trying to cut emissions. They have, goals to, 20% reduction in total vehicle kilometres, 50% increase in daily active travel journeys, 130% increase in daily public transport journeys, and a 25% reduction in daily car journeys. So these are the climate action. And first of all, it's ludicrous to think that if, Johnny and Mary, are now getting on a bus instead of getting in their car, they're somehow saving the planet, by standing in the rain, waiting for the bus, by spending twice as long getting to where they're going, and then the bus not turning up to bring them home. So public transport is not as good in this city as it is in other capital cities.
That's another thing which, a lot, I guess, the green activists who are trying to cut emissions and say find alternative transport, but like our alternative, our public transport is comparatively to other capital cities, very, very poor.
It's very, very poor. And it's like anytime if you're looking to go somewhere, and sometimes I do it on maps, just like how long does it take in a car? How long does it take by bus? And it's usually bus or Lewis or whatever. Someone contacted me about there used to be a direct bus route from Clondalkin to DCU. And so I was just looking that up, and there isn't anymore now. You have to change. And so every time you change a bus as well, you risk obviously the fact the bus might not show up, so it does add to your journey every time you have to change. And you'll always have to change, there always will be changes, but DCU is obviously it's a third level university, so it's kind of better to have more direct links. But anyway, if you're looking at the travel times, like by car, worst traffic scenario, 50 minutes. By bus, the middle of the day, it's going to take you an hour and 20 minutes, so, and that's up to 2 hours, so wherever you want to go really in the city, if you go by car, the chances are, show me somewhere where you can go by public transport that it's quicker by car. So that is one thing. But then the other thing is these active, and I think I would spend more time in Dún Laoghaire, Rathdown than I would in Dublin City or Fingal. So I see that more, obviously apart from South Dublin, but like where they are, they're widening the cycle paths, they're widening the footpaths there. So instead of where you would have like a left turn, whereas you could filter left, when you're going left, that they're actually getting rid of those now, so that the people turning left, instead of being able to filter left, are having to stay in the main flow of traffic. And so that basically means you spend 3 or 4 times as long sitting in traffic with your exhaust, unless you, of course, have an electric car. So it's not helping, but also it's stressing people out. Like no one wants to be spending more time in traffic. If you have to get home, cook the dinner, if you have kids, or wherever, maybe you just need to be somewhere. It's making your journey longer. It's causing your journey to be more stressful. You've got more emissions. You're sitting in traffic for longer. So it's not good for any reason. And they are these like ridiculous climate targets. Like nothing we do as a country will make any difference to climate change if you believe cutting emissions will affect the climate, which I don't. But nothing we do, we're far too small as a country. We will never have any effect on this. So it's really, to me, it's penalising the hardworking Irish people of Dublin. I know it's happening around the country, but I'm obviously in Dublin, and so that's my focus. So it's idiotic. And recently we had Clondalkin is they've got a local planning framework in place, so they want to make the village nicer, and it's great. It's a round tower, so it's been around for a while, and as you mentioned, it's already quite challenging to get around the city, and they do. South Dublin do want to do a lot of good things, make it nicer, make it more accessible, make it more amenable, improved frontage. Sign frontage can be pretty disastrous in places. So there's a lot of good things that they want to do, but the 3.7% of the population of South Dublin cycle. 3.7%. So out of every 100 people going to work or college or school, less than 4 of them use a bike. But they still want to run a cycle lane through the main street of Clondalkin, which would effectively cut off another lane of traffic. So you'd only be able to go one way. So the people living along there would no longer be able to go out and go left or right. They'd either have to go one way. They also want to kind of narrow junctions. So, so you've got junctions where it's kind of a tight squeeze for two cars, but now they want to make it so that it's only one lane of cars can get through. So again,
Wow.
you're causing an already challenging situation to be a lot more challenging. So thankfully, I was able to hopefully mobilise enough people and get the word out. And other people, members of the public would just see it too and let people know. And we submitted things online. So the closing date for that was the 29th of September. So I will be also, when we're discussing it as a local, our local area members, and then in full council, I'll be opposing any reduction in traffic. Like we have to keep traffic moving. There's nothing is, people aren't going to stop driving. They're just going to spend longer in their cars. I was chatting with one lady there on Friday. I had a meeting on Friday night about this, and she said she doesn't have a car at the moment, so she has to cycle. She said it took her 3 days to dry out her runners after being out in the rain. Wow. Literally 3 days. They took 3 days, excuse me, to dry out. So it's just, we don't live in Copenhagen. We don't live in Amsterdam. We don't live in cities that are conducive to cycling. Someone over the age of 20, maybe 30, is not going to suddenly start cycling just because there's a cycle lane. Because if you've never been on a bike, I cycled everywhere when I was a child and into my, mid-20s. You just got on a bike and you went. And I didn't have to suddenly cross the road because the cycle lane went from here to there for no apparent reason. And I just, you were with the buses and you were with the cars. So I'm used to cycling. I think cycling is great if that's how you want to get around, but you can't force these changes on people. People will not start cycling if they've never cycled. It's just, it is what it is.
I guess my question then is, so you want to make it a more car commuter friendly environment.
Well, I want to maintain. I don't want it to get any harder for cars to get around. It's already challenging enough.
Yeah.
So I don't want it to get any more challenging for cars to get
that's
from A to B. Yeah.
understood. Do you have much support in South Dublin County Council? So you mentioned that you have a lot of these revolutionary socialist types who don't seem to be with it at all. And as I outlined, that you have nonsensical bicycle lane switches, and that's in Dublin city centre. And you were talking about a lot of nonsensical bike lanes going here and there all over the place. There's a lot of councillors who don't really seem to be with it when it comes to city planning. Is there enough support? Is this what you're putting out an appeal to, that to get more people involved who are a little bit more on the ball when it comes to travelling into the city and city planning? I guess that's my question.
I am hoping that, because there was a public consultation, so people could submit their views. And other things that they want to do, and they're trying to do it again all over the country, is open estates. So it's increasing permeability so that it's easier to walk from one estate to another, or cut through an estate to get from A to B. And again, in an ideal world, that sounds great. But if you live in a nice, quiet estate with a cul-de-sac, people value that. People value the quietness. They value it for the kids being able to go out and play, that you don't have this. The scooters are such a hazard to pretty much anybody who's on the road and who's not on a scooter. Scooters and e-bikes, for even just kids act on the maggot, but like drug dealing and all sorts of antisocial behaviour. So if you have a nice quiet estate and you bought a house in a quiet estate, and suddenly you find out the council want to open the back of your estate to another estate or a main road or whatever to increase permeability, people are very upset about that. So that was another thing as well. So I hope to have had enough people, and I think we did well getting people mobilised, submitting their objections to the permeability, to the bus lanes, to the cycle lanes going in. And they actually want to get rid of one of the bus lanes down Ninth Lock Road in the village, and put in cycle lanes. And I mean, bus lanes are essential. We have to have bus lanes. We should have as many bus lanes as we can. We should not be getting rid of bus lanes for cycle lanes. It's Ireland. This is not the south of France. This is the land of eternal winter, according to the Romans. So it's a case of I hope I have had enough people object, and I will be putting my full weight, as much weight as I can, behind this. But I mean, the councillors have to honour the will of the people. So if you're elected by the people and say 50 people objected to this, then I believe they will hopefully have to concede, okay, well, the people don't want it, so we can't go with it. So that's why, again, it's so important to run for the council. And it doesn't seem like a very sexy job. It doesn't seem like a very enticing job, but actually you can genuinely stop this sort of thing from happening. If I had say another 2 or 3 people who thought like me, then we would have a much easier, and this is just in my LEA of 7 councillors. So say instead of kind of being the only one who's 100% against it. Now a few are kind of on the fence, but if there were say 3 of us that were no, this is a really bad idea, then we would have a lot more influence in stopping it going through.
Would you call that a working group?
The working groups tend to be inter-party, so the strategic policy committees, you would have them from different parties. So no, this is so there will be meetings with the planners on the results of this area plan consultation. And so I will be saying, okay, well, if people don't want permeability from this estate to this estate, then it shouldn't go ahead. But there will possibly be other councillors who are saying, actually, no, well, really, even though everybody's saying it's a bad idea, we still think it's a good idea, and they'll give all their reasons why. But if there were a few more people similar in minded to me on it, then it would be much easier for me to push it through. But what's happening is all over the country this is happening, and people don't realise, because a lot of the councils are taken over by people who are quite left and quite far left, who think that this is the way to save the planet. And at the end of the day, it's not like this is making life easier, for you and me and for everybody else. It's about this saving the planet, which again, we're never going to do.
And I guess because we have a couple of minutes left, I just wanted to speak to you on briefly, because it's still relevant. It was an RT News again about the flags going up all around communities, all around Dublin City, around Ireland. So you have about 2 minutes left. Maybe you could give your take on how are you going to respond to this as a councillor in South Dublin County Council, and how is the council responding to it in your area? Are they taking it down? Are they being a little bit? Are they overblowing the issue, or what's the reaction?
It hasn't actually been raised in a council meeting, so Dublin City seems to have a lot more interesting conversations than we do. We're generally not well. Obviously, we have our few, but it hasn't been raised. Interestingly, I did question the trans flag flying outside the civic offices in Clondalkin, and I was told, again, this going back to the importance of getting people onto the council, that it was the Strategic Policy Committee has decided that the trans flag would go up on the International Trans Day of Visibility. So until you get enough people on the council who will actually go in and say, actually, we don't want the trans flag up, then the trans flag will keep being flown. But the interesting thing again on that is like, yeah, so you can have your trans flag, you can have your Palestinian flag, you can have whatever flag you want, but then people start bristling when they see the tricolour, you know, and they call it divisive, but actually it's not, because the essence of the tricolour is to bring, you know, the Protestants and the Catholics
the green
together, you know.
Catholicism.
Yeah.
White equality,
Yeah.
and orange for Protestantism. That's very true.
So it is, and it's if you want one flag up, and if you believe people should fly the Palestinian flag, then how could you possibly have a problem with flying the Irish flag? And I think it just shows how I don't know, narrow-minded, you know, certain people are. But no, it hasn't been raised in council level within South Dublin. So anybody who's flying the tricolour in South Dublin won't have anything to be concerned about.
Well, the fact that RT News are still talking about it, still making national news, you'd wonder maybe the media are overblowing things or something.
Making mountains out of molehills. You know.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, you know, we've housing crisis, we've scoliosis crisis, we've waiting list crisis. Like there's an immigration crisis. Like, these are the things that they need to be focused on. Like, not whether someone chooses to put a tricolour or paint the gable end of their house, you know, in the green, white, and orange. Like, I mean, you know, so like, again, that's I don't really think that's the business of councils or the government. They should just actually focus on, you know, running the country properly.
Absolutely. Well, I think we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Linda, for joining me today. So yeah, may I remind the audience to please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and maybe leave a comment if you want to get involved in the conversation. This has been Ireland Reports, and good evening.